Good day, grade 12, and welcome to Matriekklas. Today our focus is English First Additional Language, and I am Mr. Damian Macherman. So, you might ask, why English First Additional Language? Obviously, there are many subjects, but English is my favorite, and you need to ensure it's your favorite. It is the one subject where you can guarantee to get that A at the end of this year. So, our focus for today will be the summary. Okay, that is question 2 in your paper 1. Obviously, first paper 1, 2, and 3. So let us look at the question paper. Okay, so once we look at paper 1, which is 80 marks, and in the previous lesson, I focused also on this, and I need you to understand the priority of this question paper, right? So if we look at it, it tells us that the paper, it assesses your language abilities, that being your comprehension, summary, visual literacy, language and editing skills. So those are the 5 components and obviously your 5 questions in the question paper. You need to manage your time effectively, and thus it being 2 hours. Your question paper also provides you with time management. So you need to do your best to manage your time. Read before responding to each and every question. And then most importantly, do not rush through the question paper. Please, you are given 2 hours at the end to complete this NSE paper. If I were you, I would utilize all the time I have. The paper counts 20% towards the final examination, so you need to work. This is the first paper you're going to write on the 31st of October. So please, I cannot beg you more. Prepare yourself thoroughly. And then, you cannot use past papers to study from, right? Use the past papers as a guide. Check how these questions are composed, look at the mark allocations, use the memorandums, and then you obviously check how you can obviously answer the types of questions and not those questions. No question paper which has been written will be written again. So please do not see these question papers as a question paper to study, but you can make use of the questions to identify how questions are posed. Okay, so we look at summary skills. What does a summary mean? A summary obviously means that you are going to take all the information you have gathered, okay, and you would bring it together as one. So that would mean to summarize. However, in your grade 12 examination, to summarize the text provided to you, you need to ensure that you follow the instruction, okay? That is why it is imperative, once you receive your question paper, you have 10 minutes reading time. Utilize the time effectively. Read your question, read the instruction, and then you will know what exactly to do. So, let us look at the points for the summary writing skills. Okay, so the first one says, summarize the text in your own words. Now, grade 12, if you read your question paper, and if you go back and look at past question papers, you will see that the instructions says exactly just that in your own words. Even in your comprehension, it is always in your own words. Then, adhere to the instructions, right? So look for what you need to summarize. Don't you decide what you want to summarize. Or if the text is about global warming, for example, then you take the text and you summarize the whole text. But you did not follow the instruction. So please, read the instruction, identify what you need to do. The third bullet tells us, do not summarize the whole text. That is exactly what I just said, right? Follow the steps which were provided to you. Don't you decide, okay, well, this is the text, I don't have enough time, this is what I'm going to do. Instead, you should manage the time effectively. So when you get to the summary text, you would know you're going to read the instructions, identify what you need to do, and then you would, of course, get to what you need to do. Okay? Right. The next one tells us there, do not change the meaning of the sentence when you paraphrase. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot emphasize this more. Do not change the meaning of the sentence. You see, it happens, right? We want to take the text and then we want to obviously not copy it verbatimly. So we paraphrase it into our own words. But we lose the meaning of that sentence. The moment you lose the meaning, you lose a point. So now you lose a mark because you did not keep the meaning of that sentence. And when you lose the meaning of the sentence, it means you lose not just a mark for the point, you also lose a mark for language. Because now the less points you have correct, the less marks you get for language. So please, grade 12, take your time, right? Let's look at the last point. When you quote, use quotation marks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we tend to forget quotation marks. Even in your question 1, I have explained to you in the comprehension, if you're asked to quote, that is the instruction. A quote needs quotation marks. I cannot just now, out of somewhere, select words with no quotation marks. Then obviously, it will be wrong. So if you do decide to quote, use quotation marks. Now, I won't advise anybody to quote, because the main instruction says to write it in your own words. So if you've identified the points, all I would do if I were you, I would take those points and add in additional words. So I'm not changing the meaning of the sentence. However, those points are now in my own words. You see how important it is to prepare for the summary. If you take your time, grade 12, to prepare, then obviously you won't have a problem when you are writing that paper on the 31st of October. So, utilize these skills, utilize the skills your teacher is teaching you, and you will ensure that this summary actually is answered the way it's supposed to be. Okay, we move on. So, how are the marks allocated? This is very important. Some of us don't understand how the marks are allocated. So, language marks are awarded accordingly. For the quotes, right? If you provide 1 to 5 correct quotes, you get 1 language mark, only 1. If you provide 6 to 7 quotes, you get 0 language marks. Just look at that. You go from 1 to 0. So if you provide 7, you only get 7 out of 10. Do you understand now why I'm telling you, don't quote. Instead, let's paraphrase. Now let's look at paraphrase. If it's 1 to 3 points correct, paraphrase correctly, and the meaning is still the same, you get 1 mark. If it's 4 to 5, you get 2 marks. If it's 6 to 7, you get 3 marks. Now just imagine you get 6 points correct. 6 paraphrase points correct. Plus 3 gives me 9. 9 out of 10, 90% just for question 2. Can you understand now why it would be important to paraphrase instead of deciding I'm just going to quote the answers and that's it? Language marks are imperative and you don't know. Those 3 language marks can be between the 79 and the 80%. Even the 89 and the 90%. So if I were you, I'm working towards the A at the end of the year. Because that A is also going to help me when I need to get into the institutions. So it is important that I prepare. But if I don't, I can lose the 3 marks. And the 3 marks can have an effect on my final result. So please be wary of this. Okay? So we move on. Ladies and gentlemen, please, do not make use of memos of past papers to prepare. Please do not do that. We have found that learners go and you make use of the memo. So what you see quotation marks and facts. And then you write your exam like that. So you write question 2 and then you draw the table. You provide quotes and facts. Why? Because you did exactly what I told you not to do when I started now. Do not use the past paper to study. That's the problem. You either provide facts or quotes. You need to decide which one of the 2. So, instead of deciding I'm going to draw a table, why you are going to draw a table, only you would know. Remember, you have been taught since you started school, you only get the mark for the first answer. So your first table would be quotation marks. What if they are incorrect? If they are incorrect, you lose marks. Imagine getting 0 for a summary, which is right in front of you. Just imagine that. That would impact on your final mark for that question paper and on your final mark. So if I were you, listen to your teacher, utilize these skills I am providing you today. Okay, so we move on to what is an example of a summary. You might ask, where did I get this? I mean, ladies and gentlemen, by now you should know the past papers are accessible to you. You can go to the DBE website and you can look at the past papers as well as the memorandum, right? You have access to it. So why not utilize them to understand how the questions will be posed and also exposing yourself how answers must be provided. So let us look at the very first one, right? It tells you there, question 2, there are many aspects that one should consider when writing a professional email. Now, if I look at the first slide already, that is just information provided to me. That is nothing else. It's not an instruction. It's not telling me what to do. There's no guidance there. It is just additional information in the text. So I need to understand that somewhere, somehow, this is about a professional email. Why? Because I've read. But now I go and I look at my instruction there. It says, read text C below and list 7 points on how to write a professional email. Now remember I said earlier, you need to identify exactly what you need to do. Thus, you need to look for the instruction. And your instruction, ladies and gentlemen, you will see over there, it is in bold. So you don't have a problem to identify it. The department places it in bold in every question paper. So why would you provide the wrong facts if it is given to you in bold, right? So we look further at the instructions. It tells us the summary must be written in point form. Now, here I need to stop quickly and you need to understand the following. English is your first additional language, but you might have a different home language, right? So for example, Afrikaans home language, right, requires of you to write the summary in a certain standard. Just so does English first additional language. You cannot confuse the two. Are you with me? If your home language requires of you to write it in a paragraph, then you write it in a paragraph. But your additional language requires it to be point form. You need to ensure you write it in point form and obviously chronologically. What do I mean by that? Look at the layout of the summary, follow the paragraphs, and provide it as such when you answer in the examination. Okay? Number 2 says, list your 7 points in full sentences using no more than 70 words. Now you might ask me, where do I get the 7 points from? In your instruction it says, read text C below and list 7 points, right? There you would see only 7 points. Now, there might be more than 7 points in the summary text. Only provide the 7. Don't provide the 10. You're not going to get 3 extra marks because you gave 3 extra answers. Unfortunately, it does not work that way. The instruction says 7. So stick to the 7 points, please. Right? Now, very important there. It says using no more than 70 words. Now, for the life of me, ladies and gentlemen, I don't understand this part. You are told to write in 70 words, and then we get students who exceed the 70 words. And then you tell your teacher after the paper, I didn't have enough time. Now, I tell you this, if you manage your time effectively and adhere to the instructions, and it was 70 words for 7 points, that tells me 10 words per point, then of course, I would have had enough time. But because I did not follow the instruction, then automatically, I won't be able to answer the summary, right? So understand what you need to do. Then, the student who decides they are only going to write 55 words instead of the 70. Ladies and gentlemen, understand this. You're penalizing yourself. Not the marker, not your teacher. You are penalizing yourself. Don't blame the teacher or the department and the marker and say the paper was difficult. You penalized yourself. We are not that punitive. We are punitive when you're not following instruction. The instruction was not more than 70 words. But if you've got 55 words, only 55, and you've got the correct points, you will get your marks. You see how important it is? Technical aspects. If you adhere to the instruction and understand how to do this, then of course you will get your marks, right? We look at the others. It says there, number your sentence from 1 to 7. Obviously, that provides me with the order it has to be in, right? Only 1 point per sentence. So once I've identified my point, that it would be per sentence, I have just told you, don't provide more than the 7. Use your own words as far as possible. You will see their own is capitalized, ladies and gentlemen. It is capitalized. You need to understand that you need to provide your own words. Okay? And then the last one says, indicate the total number of words you have used in brackets at the end of your summary. Now, some of us, we forget to do this. And then, when it comes to the marking, you want to tell your teacher, but sir, or miss, or ma'am, I gave enough words, as if your teacher cannot count. I think we tend to forget that. Well, we can count. We can see when it's too little or when it's too many. Be very careful of this, right? So let's look at the summary. So remember, I'm looking at 7 points on how to write a professional email. A professional one. So I would look at the text, ladies and gentlemen, right? And then obviously, to get to know the text, I need to read. So there it says, email etiquette, right? That is my title. That is what I've identified. But now you need to look at the text and firstly, read this text. I cannot just decide I'm going to start now and I'm just going to look for anything. I'm going to identify anything, and that anything I'm going to write down. I need to read the text first, get an understanding of the text before doing anything, right? So I'm going to read the text. I'm going to spend my time on the text to understand the text. So I'm reading the text, right? Immediately thereafter, I just come back a little and look at my instruction, which says how to write a professional email. So now I ask myself, where did I identify these? So if I can't identify it immediately, I go back. So I read the first paragraph and you read with me. An electronic email or mail, which is an email, is regarded as a popular, efficient, and accessible form of communication in most workplaces in the world. It is important to consider guidelines on how to write a professional email with a clear message. Now, if I were you, ladies and gentlemen, and you had followed me, I'm sure you would be telling me right now, but there's nothing in that first paragraph. Exactly. That is why you need to read. And if I go back to my instruction constantly, I would be able to identify whether there are any points in the first paragraph. But then I move on to the next one. So, your personal email address represents you. A name such as Fast and Furious in an email address is not suitable when communicating with an employer. Now that makes sense to me. That tells me that has to do with how to write a professional email. So there already, it clicks to me, that is a first point. So I've identified my very first point. Now I know I've got a first point. So what do? Now, I either highlight in the question paper, and you are allowed to highlight in the question paper, or you take a ruler and you underline that point. And then you write 1. Remember, that's your first point. You've now identified number 1. And then you continue reading. Number 2, you identify 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, there might be more. Like I said, only identify the 7. And then the question now is, now what must I do with the 7, sir? What exactly am I going to do after this? So, what do I tell my kids to do? You take those 7 points you've identified in this text. Okay? You've now already underlined them. You have now already identified each and every one by placing it number 1, 2, 3, 4, up until 7. So what do? In your question paper, you've already indicated section B, question 2. Now you write down those 7 points verbatimly. As is. You write them down. Okay? Below that, you write final draft. Okay? And you take those 7 points and you place them at the bottom there and you paraphrase them. So now you take the first point and you write it in your own words, in your understanding. So if I go back and I look at this text, which tells me a name such as Fast and Furious in an email address is not suitable when communicating with an employer, immediately I think I need to paraphrase this. So automatically I need to say Fast and Furious as a name for an email address is not appropriate when communicating with anyone. Or I state, when communicating with an employer, Fast and Furious is not, right? It is not an appropriate name. Immediately, what did I do? I changed. I paraphrased. It's in my words. Okay? It is in my words. I've added words. I've changed words. But I did not copy it verbatimly and quoted it. Because giving me the more marks would be what? Right? To paraphrase. Exactly. Instead of wanting to quote and losing language marks. I would rather go for the more marks grade 12 than go for the less marks. So rather take your time and read through this text. Now, I can understand if you look at this text, you tell yourself, this is too much. I have just read a comprehension which is also as many words, and I had to answer it, and it is daunting and it is draining. But ladies and gentlemen, this is not the first question paper you are writing. It's not your first language paper. So take your time and tell yourself, when I'm summarizing, I must identify key points. So if I look at this paragraph, right, I can immediately tell myself that I must identify the point, which I did in the first paragraph. The first paragraph over there was nothing. So I drew a line through it in pencil. I've identified the idea with regards to Fast and Furious. So now I go on. In the third paragraph, immediately it says the subject line indicates the importance and topic of discussion in an email. The subject line must therefore be appropriate. So if I look at that, immediately I'm paraphrasing. And then I'm going to say, a subject line is important to use. And it needs to be suitable to the context of the email. As simple as that. As simple as that, I've paraphrased. You see how important it is just to take what you've read and placing it into your own words. You need to learn how to do that. And if you don't know, teach yourself. Use those past papers and see how far you can get with answering that summary question. Right? I have another text. Now this text is a bit different to the previous one. Okay? It tells us there are specific skills that job seekers will need in this new decade, the 2020s. Now that obviously, once again, additional information. Then my instruction, read text here below and list 7 skills that job seekers will need in the 2020s. Right? List 7 skills. Now, once again, same instructions below there, exactly the same. Now I need to look at what exactly I need to do. Okay? So now I look at the text. So obviously, in the first paragraph it says, the new decade beginning in 2020 has seen the pace of digital transformation increase. This transformation has changed the demands of the workplace. Now I ask myself the question, is that a skill? That's not a skill. So nothing there I could use to place there, right, for job seekers. So I move on again. Jason Winger, Dean of the School of Professional Studies at Columbia University, says that previous generations have had the same job for a long time. Okay, does it fit? No, it's not a skill. The younger generation needs to be able to change jobs more often as companies are hiring workers on a contract basis. Immediately it rings a bell because it says there that they need to change jobs. So that is a skill I'm providing, right? A job seeker. So number 1, I've identified. I underline, I indicate 1. I continue. Consequently, workers will have to be flexible and constantly adjust to new work environments. Immediately, Point number 2, I indicate number 2, I underline, and then I carry on. So, all I need to do, I need to read. But if I don't read, listen to what I'm saying. If I don't read the instruction, if I don't understand what I'm doing, automatically this summary won't be a summary. It will become the summary of the whole text instead of a summary adhering to the instruction. Now I need to understand the following. If I'm going to read it, right, I've made meaning of it. Thus, meaning was made, so I need to summarize it now. But meaning also needs to be made by the instruction. Thus, I cannot, grade 12, emphasize how important this line here is, right? The part that says after, below, and, right? List 7. 7 what? That is immediately what you need to go and identify. You either highlight it, you pencil it. I've told you already, it is in bold. But that is the most important thing you need to do. The moment you decide, well, I'm just going to read, I'm going to identify 7 points and write a summary, immediately you fail yourself. Only because you didn't want to read further, you didn't want to understand. Because both these summaries I've shown you, both you will see are highlighted, right? How to write a professional email, and then obviously skills that job seekers will need in the 2020s. Most important thing, the identification of what I need to do. That's the most important thing here. Nothing else. So adhere to what you need to do and do not, I beg of you, do not go and do your own thing. Listen to your teacher. Utilize these skills. Practice, practice, practice. Practice from past papers at school. Practice from past papers that you will find available on the DBE website. Easily accessible. All you need to do, you type in on Google, DBE past papers. Years of papers are provided to you. June papers, December, November papers are provided. Practice, practice your summary skills. Only you can ensure that you get a very good mark for this question and for this question paper. No one else. Your educator does his or her best. You need to do the rest. I wish you all of the best with the examination, and I know that you know how to do a summary. So all of the best, and do just your best. Thank you.